And then we'll also probably pull the audio and make part of it a podcast. So we'll keep you posted on all of that. But we are so excited to have Cathy Byrd with us tonight. Cathy wrote a book called The Boy Who Knew Too Much. And Cathy was a realtor and kind of came about this authorship in a unique perspective. So Cathy, tell us a little bit, how did you go from being a realtor? What's your backstory to becoming an author?
Okay, so my son, for those of you who've read the book, I'll make this quick, but when he was around 2 years old, he had this crazy fascination with baseball, insisted on wearing a uniform every day. And then right around his 3rd birthday, he started telling us stories and insisting that he was a tall baseball player. That he was tall like daddy, and he used to stay in hotels every night, and he went on trains, and he would just come out with these things. And at first I didn't take it real seriously, but over time, a lot of it was like historically accurate. And then kind of, I would say the life experiences, like all these synchronistic events happened. Like he got discovered on YouTube to do a movie with Adam Sandler, which brought us to Boston. So we're at Fenway Park, and the Yankees happen to be playing the Red Sox while we're there. And he sees this big picture of Babe Ruth, and he says, "I don't like him. He was mean to me." Got really, really upset. And then he would just continue to insist, like I was tall like daddy is tall, And so I wasn't really open to it. I think Leanne was probably even more open than I was at this point. Being a Christian and having like guilt around even considering the idea of reincarnation. My sister Laura, who lives in Nashville, she's really, really involved in her church there too. And it's just not something I was raised with, or that was something that was like, it was a little taboo, I would say. But then as the journey went on and there was more confirmation and the story gets involved, as you know, it goes on from kind of the first half of my book is all about Christian and his memories and the things he told us. And then the second book really goes into the life of Lou Gehrig and his mother and finding closure with all of that. But writing the book, Leanne was very instrumental in writing the book. I was putting it off, and I said, I'm going to do it next year. And Leanne says, "Cathy, what if you consider the possibility of doing it now?" And I was like, no. I can't do it now. I can't do it now. My kids are in school. And she's like, well, what if you just take off for 30 days and just go write it? And that was like incomprehensible to me, that whole idea, because I had never been away from my kids. My kids were pretty little. I want to say 5 and 8. And I couldn't really leave them. I didn't have anyone. My husband wasn't really capable of taking care of them at that age. So Leanne said, "Send them to me. I'll take care of them for 30 days. You go on this writing retreat. I'll take your kids." So my book would not be here without Leanne, and her offering and making that offer, made my husband step up to the plate and say, "Okay, I'm going to do this," because he wasn't going to be proven that he couldn't do it. So it all worked out. We had an exchange student that lived with us at the time, and he was really helpful. And I went to Bali for 30 days on a writing retreat and wrote 165 pages. I just went to bed every night with like a chapter in mind that I wanted to write. I would wake up in the morning and the words would just like pour out on the page. And then I would, every night, that ritual of like just prepare what I was going to write about. And then I came back, and it took me about another 9 months to do a rewrite. I won a writing contest. I won that with a draft. I don't know how I did that, but I won a writing contest with Hay House. I think I just did a proposal. Yeah, I did a proposal. They didn't even have a book at that point. And I won a writing contest, get my book published. So that's really how I got my book published. And then out of that came a movie deal, kind of exciting and very serendipitous. But it's had a lot of detours because when you hand over your story to people for something like a movie, you're really just surrendering to it. So the first script, they hired all these huge Hollywood screenwriters. The first script, I was like this horrible, materialistic realtor. I was absentee mother. Like, it was like, I'm like, how did this happen? His dad was like Mr. Baseball. and so I got new writers after that. And those writers made it into a movie all about Little League. And everyone missed the spiritual message. So we were 3 weeks out from shooting. They were ready to cast the actress, and they couldn't pin down. They wanted Bryce Dallas Howard to do it. It was 20th Century Fox, and she wasn't available. So they said, okay, we're going to pull the plug, and we're going to shoot it next fall. And within that month, it just, like, I felt in my heart, bigger than anything, I thought, you know what, I have to walk away from this field. And I was 3 weeks out from getting $1 million, and I was broke. So this was like, made no sense, but I knew I had to do it. And I kind of just took that leap and that plunge of faith and just said, can I get my rights back? Like, I just want to kind of be done with this, because if it's not going to have a spiritual message, which is the reason I wrote the book, then there's no reason to have a movie about it. And then it puts my kids out there. You know, it was hard enough to put them out there with the book and make them vulnerable to, you know, teasing and all that. So I walked away, and that was a year ago. And I literally it was a rough year. I mean, it was hard. But as things have come around, you know, now I'm getting back in there. And now I've actually been for a year and a half working on the screenplay with a screenwriting partner. And we've got the message in there. It went to like Gal Gadot yesterday, the girl who plays Wonder Woman, or the woman who plays Wonder Woman. And it's it's floating around Hollywood right now. So hopefully, I'm just praying that like the forces that be bring the right people together, and that the message stays in there, and that it's all a happy ending and worth the wait.
So talk a little bit about, for those who haven't read, I know we put out, Cathy was kind enough to give us a copy of the book to share with you all so that you could read it. But if you didn't get a chance to read it yet, give us kind of the synopsis of the story, Cathy.
I'll give you, here, I have a book in front of me. So basically, if you haven't seen it, so it's basically a true story about Christian's past life memories. And I think Leanne has this. If you guys want to look through, like, there's pictures in here. Christian had some like incredible experiences. Like, he got to throw a first pitch for the Dodgers when he was, you know, right at his 4th birthday. He's had some really cool experiences. But basically, the first half of the book, like I was saying, is really all about Christian's past life memories and me kind of coming to terms with it and opening my mind to the possibility that this could be actually what he's telling me it is. And in it, you know, I've got friends that are like, come on, Cathy, like, he could have learned that anywhere. And that's what kids do. They make stuff up, and you don't want to be on the wrong side of God. And, you know, so it was really hard. And these are my 2 best friends that were telling me these things. So I was like, it shut me up completely. Leanne was one of the first people in the family that I could talk to about it, really, too. We went to Lake Tahoe that summer. Sherry would be open too, but Leanne was in that space.
I was staying in the same condo.
Yeah, I know, that's true too. That's true. We were living together. Basically, so what happened is when Christian was 5 years old, there's a professor named Dr. Jim Tucker at the University of Virginia. And at the medical school there, they've been studying cases of children's past lives since 1967 and documenting them. So even though these past life stories have been coming up since the beginning of time, really, in the US, they only started documenting them in 1967. So it's been about 53 years now that they've collected like stories, data on like 3,000 cases nearly. So Jim Tucker, who does that, who goes out and meets these kids and asks the questions, he came to our house from Virginia. He interviewed Christian. And then while he was at our house, Christian, you know, he asked Christian, how did you die? And Christian said, my body stopped working. And these were things I never asked my son. Like, I didn't say, how'd you die? I would have never thought to ask that. And so during that visit, Christian said, well, I picked her to be my mom, and then she got old. And I was like, he had not said that to me before. I didn't know what he was saying. And then so Jim Tucker asked him questions and said, well, where was she when you picked her? And he said, well, she was being born. And he was 5 years old when he said this. And then he said, where were you? And he said, I was in the sky. And so as we went through that, later, Dr. Tucker told me that many of these children who they document have very specific memories around choosing their parents. And we've since become friends with a boy named James Leininger, and he has a pretty remarkable story about having memories of being fighter pilot in World War II. And he is now 21 years old, and we've met him. He's a great guy. He shared with Christian, getting bullied for it and all of his experiences around, coming out publicly with past life memories. But he is right now just graduated from his basic training in the military. So it's really interesting that he would go from this military life, where he had very specific memories of being shot down in a plane, had major nightmares as a kid, even was able to meet the family of this pilot, this World War II pilot who passed away. And even the family said, like, this has to be my brother. He told me things that no one would ever know. Like a woman who's 80 told him, you were my brother. So basically, after Dr. Tucker came, I got a little more intrigued because Christian had always pointed at pictures of Lou Gehrig's mom and said, you were her, which I never really paid attention to because I really thought that was more of him trying to assimilate, memories present. So after the Dr. Tucker experience, I went and did a past life regression, which was like really out of my comfort zone at first. But I have on my website, I have all the transcripts from the past life regressions that I did. But that was really where the shift occurred for me.
Explain a little bit about, for those who don't know, what exactly is a past life regression? What does that mean?
Okay. Yeah, so past life regression is done by a hypnotherapist. And you basically, you're laying down, counts 3 backwards, and then all of a sudden you're in a trance basically. And when I look at the regression, I still don't know, like, was I her or was I channeling her? But what really came through is that, like, the information that came through was undeniable. Like, I saw jewelry that I was giving to a little kid. I described, like, a house I was in right before she died, like in her 70s. I described a 10-year-old little boy, a 7-year-old little girl with short brown hair, and I described specific items that I was giving to them as I was dying. And then, through other serendipitous circumstances, I went to Cooperstown, to the Hall of Fame with Tommy Lasorda, who became a good friend of ours on this journey. And through that, I actually found out that there was a real 10-year-old little boy and 7-year-old little girl who Lou Gehrig's mother lived with in the last 2 years of her life. And I went and I met them and I found them, and they actually had the items that I saw. So, and the most amazing thing is
there
to watch.
for a second. Don't go too fast over that. So pause there.
Okay. Yeah, it's a little complicated.
And one of the stories that you've told me is that you went and you described kind of this necklace, I believe it was. And wasn't it a minister who was there?
Oh, yeah. The 10-year-old little boy
became a minister.
Pastor, yeah.
A pastor. And he said, what did he say?
Okay, so his explanation of it, I mean, this is a really amazing pastor. He now lives in North Carolina, and he's done some great things in his life. Like, and one of his wildest jobs was he helped witches get out of witchcraft in Salem, Massachusetts for like 20 years. So he is just an open-minded, but just a lovely human being. He just sent me a message yesterday. So his interpretation, he said, well, Cathy, I don't believe in reincarnation. Like, it's not part of my faith, but I do believe that this is a sacred experience that you and Christian had. And I do believe that it's, comes from being in the channel of God, like in the flow of God. It's information that comes from another dimension that we don't always see. So that was kind of like the end of the journey where we could just like exhale and go, okay, we don't need to know what it means. We don't need to know, we need to take from it the really important lesson, which is like that our souls survive death. And that was when I did Dr. Oz, when we did the interview recently on Dr. Oz's show. He asked me that. He said, Cathy, what do you say to skeptics? And I was like, well, I can relate to skeptics because I was probably one of the biggest skeptics of all. But the biggest thing that I want people to know is that I'm not here to try to get people to believe in reincarnation. Like, that's not the message of the book. The message of the book is really to just see that our souls survive death. And that if we can all begin to see each other as souls within a body rather than our physical body, then we can have a lot more compassion. It just puts it's a different world, so that was really the message that I wanted to get through in the book. And hopefully that's what's coming through in the screenplay. And the big message in the screenplay is this message of community and the fact that we all need each other, and the metaphor of baseball being a team sport. No baseball player can win a game on their own, right? Just like in society, we all need each other. And that's really just what I really hope to do with the movie and hopefully with the book.
Okay, so you've got your son who's telling you that he used to be a tall baseball player, pointing out pictures of Babe Ruth, saying that guy doesn't like me. You've done these past life regressions. We met in LA, and I was out for a 36-hour trip. We were in the garment district buying some stuff, and you were talking about your book, and you had the cover, and she carried this cover around everywhere she went. And I said, "That's awesome, Cathy. How much do you have written?" And she said, oh, I haven't started yet.
And it was a good cover. It was laminated. It was like
right. The cover looked great. And I was like,
and it looked
what?
just like this. It looked exactly like this.
Right. She had the cover down. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And I was going to dinner at at a thing with Maston Kip. And she's like, who is this Maston Kip guy? And then I went to dinner, came back, got to my hotel at like 11:30 and was flying out at 6 a.m. And I had these messages from Cathy saying, oh my gosh, Maston Kip has a 30-day writing retreat in Bali. So how did you go from, I've got this idea of a book, to, you know what, I'm going to write it? Like, what was that moment that made you, because a lot of people have ideas to do things, but they get stuck in between the idea and the action.
And you also, you know what else you get stuck in is, well, I'm not a writer. So for a year and a half, I wanted to hire a ghostwriter. And then I actually paid someone. I went to this big literary agent. They said, well, you're not a writer. So if you give us $10,000, we'll get a writer for you. And this was in New York, like one of the biggest book publishers, agencies. And so I just had it in my head, like, I'm not a writer. I can't do this. Someone else needs to do it. But I will tell you, if anyone has an idea, like a story to tell, like nobody can tell it like you can. And the action, I would say the action, it did take a little kick in the butt from Leanne to actually create the space and the time. But I'll tell you, in my past life regression, the coolest thing about a past life regression is at the end of it, you speak with your higher self. And so he takes you to this place, and you give questions ahead of time if you want to ask questions, or he can also ask. So like one of the questions he asked my higher self when I was under hypnosis is like, what was the purpose of Christian and I coming back together in this lifetime? And it was, the thing that came through was for completion and closure and to relive the good time. And so that is a big theme in my book, because I realized, especially with this being stuck at home and not being able to go out and swim in the ocean and go sit on the beach and eat an ice cream cone, like the physical pleasures of life, I believe now after the experience I had, is exactly why we choose to come down and be in a physical body. Like when you die and you're a spirit and you're out there, like I really truly believe that this life, this classroom that we live in, there's no way to experience life other than in a physical body, and it's painful, and it's but the beauty too, and the beauty, all the things we're missing out on right now, right? Like, you know, I have a list on my wall. My kids, we write something every day. Like, I want to go swim in the ocean. I want to go ski in the mountains. I want to go jump in Lake Tahoe. But all of these things. So that was one thing that was huge. And then the other thing, the higher self thing. Gosh, I'm trying to think what that was. Oh, the higher self. Okay, so this was when. So one of my questions to myself was, should Cathy hire a ghostwriter to write the book? And my higher self came through, which is nothing. I was not like woo-woo at the time like I am now. And my higher self said, if Cathy, in the third person, me speaking in the third person, so that tells you already it's weird. But so my voice said, well, under hypnosis, if Cathy gives us the space and the time, we will give her the word. And I swear to you this day, like, that's what I have to do. That's what I had to do with the screenplay too, is you just have to like surrender yourself to it and just go to sleep every night with going, this is what I want to do, and wake up in the morning and the words like magnificently, it's like you have help from above. I know it sounds woo-woo, but it's absolute. I've heard it now. Now I've read a lot of writers, like Elizabeth Gilbert talks about, she has a whole book on it called Big Magic. I don't know if you know it. And she even talks about how like tribal dancers, like they're channeling, right? They're any kind of art, music, songwriting, like stuff that really resonates with your soul, it's not coming from within us, right? It's coming, the inspiration comes from outside of us.
I've heard it said that, if you get an idea and you don't act on it, you only, I think Liz Gilbert talked about it, is that you only have a certain period of time. And if you don't, then it goes to someone else.
Wow. Oh, I love
So in
that.
Big Magic, she talks about that.
Wow.
And so she talked about, she had an idea for a book and then she kind of sat on it and then somebody else had it. And like really similarities between the two.
That's interesting, right?
Right. So talk about, so you wrote the book. How did you think life would be different after writing the book?
I had fears, but I have to tell you, I felt so protected because I worked through that so much ahead of time that was also kind of magical. How I had all these fears, like that my son would be up to bat and he'd strike out, and people would say, "Oh, you're no Lou Gehrig," we got a little bit of that. We got a little bit of heckling, but it never touched us. It's been really kind of remarkable. So I had a lot of fear around it initially. But I feel like once I put that fear aside, I know a lot of people when it comes to writing personal stuff, are like, well, what if this person's mad at me? What if, and I'll tell you the funniest thing, I'm still friends with the two girlfriends who are in the book. We're not super close because our kids were friends when they were little and they both have boys and they go to different schools. They still don't even know they're in the book. They never read it. So all these fears you have around, like, I'm going to lose my friends. And they were great. Like I don't know. And even if they knew they were in it, I think they would be fine with it.
So
fear. I'd say fear is the number one thing to overcome.
Okay. And then, so you wrote the book and then you talked about, you had the screenplay that wasn't exactly what you envisioned.
Mm-hmm.
How do you walk away from something like that? Someone's handing you $1 million check and you're like, no, I'm good. I'm
good. Yeah. Well, it helped that the $1 million was delayed until the springtime. And then at the same time, Disney bought 20th Century Fox. So there was a ton of uncertainty. So like, it wasn't like I was literally getting it. It was like the money was out there. It was dangling. I was to be paid on the first day of production. And we had a production office. Production was opened. We hired all the people for the movie, except the lead actress. So it was there, but it was also not like right in my hand. And in retrospect, this was in November that I walked away. By the following March, which was last month, a year ago now, all the people I was working with were all fired. Like Devon Franklin no longer works with 20th Century Fox. My best friend, who was the head of marketing at 20th Century Fox, gone. She was the president of 20th Century Fox. Stacey Snider has her own production company now. Like the whole world transformed. So there's a good chance that it could have slid into the whatever. Anyway.
So I know for you, a big part of your life is based on serendipity, and you've had just some amazing experiences. And actually, Cathy's license plate is serendipity, which is ironic.
Way too many years, right?
Right. I mean, like even before the book, it's been that for, I don't know, like 20 something years.
Yeah, it's true.
Talk about how you're guided in life. Or how does that principle of serendipity?
You know what I try to do, what I'm really trying to do now, because I find even when we're locked up at home, like these synchronicities pop up. I have a whole list. I don't know where I put my list up. Like a couple days ago, I had like 3 within 24 hours that were like, wow. And it was like right when I finished the script. So what I really try to do is acknowledge and write it down, because you will forget. I forget too. But little other weird things, just confirmation, and that's all I see that as, is confirmation. Okay, you're on the right track. Here's an example. I've been working on the script for 1.5 years. I have not talked to Reverend Ken. He's the little boy who lived with Mom Garrick, and we're Facebook friends. But I haven't talked to him in 1.5 years, like over 1.5 years. Last time I talked to him was when I lived in Santa Barbara. The minute I finished the script, I got a message from him and it said, "Hi, Cathy. I'd love to have you send me a book, and if you can sign it, and I'd love to send you money for it." And I thought, like, what are the odds? And he's very intuitive and in tune with all this stuff. So I just thought, let's pretty remarkable. Like the minute you put the last period on your thing and you like save and then message Reverend Ken, and he's like the end of the whole story. So just little things like that. That I mean, the odds of that are like 1 in a million.
So you've got the screenplay done and you're circling it around Hollywood. What's next for you?
Paying my bills. I applied for unemployment today. No. Is everyone kind of in that same boat? I'm a realtor, and I am an unessential person right now, non-essential in California at least. I don't know if you guys are essential there. But yeah, I think this has been like a time of growth and expanding ourselves and trying to be creative and trying not to get too scared or too unscared that we want to just like go out and be free either. It's like a fine line of discipline and I don't know. I want to hear how everyone else is handling everything too.
Yeah, for sure. We'll make sure we have time for questions. I'm sure people have them. But how do you, I think, because you've taken some bold leaps, but how do you know in your heart, like that's what you're supposed to do? Because I think that's one thing that I see people a lot of times question or wonder, like, how do you take that bold step? How do you step out? How do you put your voice out there? So for you, how do you do that?
It's not easy. I'd say like when you take these bold leaps, like there's definitely risks in it, right? And nobody, even Elizabeth Gilbert says all the time, like, don't be a writer if you want to be rich. Like even she still, plugs away at her work. So I'd say following your passion. Like here, I have this on my desk, and this is a Elizabeth Gilbert quote that I just put here yesterday, but it's basically, it's probably backwards. Is it backwards?
What does it say? You have to read it.
So it says, create whatever causes a revolution in your heart. The rest will take care of itself. So I really live by that. Like, if you're living and you're in your purpose, and then you just have faith that like you'll be carried and that things will work out, And I know, and even like Leanne knows all the intimate details of my story, but right when I finished my book, I also filed for divorce. And that was a big leap of faith because in order to keep and retain my book rights, I gave everything I owned, the house that we had owned for 13 years, every piece of furniture to my ex-husband and walked away with nothing. And I did not have a movie deal at that point. Like I didn't even have it wasn't even on the horizon. I hadn't even shared the book with anyone. But it was like something I knew I needed to do. And I knew that if I fought him in a divorce, it would be a disaster. And then, we would probably lose our house. We would probably, it would have destroyed everything. And so now, 3 years later, we live in the same neighborhood. We have the same exact floor plan of the house. He just walked over here with his dog to bring my kids stuff that he had bought on Amazon. Like we get to quarantine separately in the same house, but we're close by. But yeah, everyone said that was the stupidest thing you ever did, and why would you give him everything? But I knew that was my only way out. I knew otherwise it was going to be a war, and it was going to be really hard on the kids. And then a month later is when I got a call out of the blue from 20th Century Fox because I had given my book, my email of my document of my book to a friend who emailed it to one other person, and they pitched it without me knowing. And so they said, oh, 20th Century Fox wants to do your movie. So that got me through that year. But like when I walked away, we were still living together, but that allowed me to actually move out and start over. But the divorce was already done while we were still living together because I knew that was the path.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see. Does anybody have any questions? You can either unmute yourself or you can put them in the chat, whichever you choose.
I have a question about Christian.
Okay.
How's he doing in baseball? And what position is he playing? And is he a pitcher?
Yes, he's a pitcher. I need to hear about your son first, too.
No.
Please.
Steven started baseball again at the age of 3. I mean, instantly a glove went in his hand, and it was baseball, baseball, baseball all the time. No other sport. And as a mom, you want to try to keep them well-rounded, and, oh, let's try gymnastics. Let's go for golf and football. And, 1 or 2 years of those sports in the off season from baseball he played, but it was always baseball. Always.
That's
And
a
as a
comic
mom,
sport.
you throw to them, you take them to the batting cages, you do everything. And then when my ex would come home, at the time we were married, he would throw to him, and just constantly waiting on the porch with a glove on, waiting for dad to come home to throw, and it's just, you just go with it, and you're like, okay, he's got some, talent. He wasn't great. He was just diligent about his workouts, his ethic, his eating. The kid would set an alarm to make sure he ate every so often in high school. We didn't have to prompt him. This kid has the best discipline, the best mindset. And he went to Vanderbilt and played baseball for Coach Corbin. And out here in the South, that's a pretty big deal.
That's a big deal.
He was drafted by the Minnesota Twins his junior year. And he's like, Mom, I got to go. I go, you have to finish your degree. You have to finish. He was like, okay. And he did. He went off and he played ball. And in the off season, he came back and finished his degree at Vanderbilt and played in the minors. He said, I'm going to give it 5 years. And that if I don't make it big by then I'll hang up my cleats and get to work. And he did. He hung it up after 4 years.
Wow.
And now he's a baseball player in mind, but a married man and happily working in medical sales, so.
Oh,
yeah.
I see. I love that story.
It's
the passion.
Baseball,
like, that's what I hear in that is his passion.
It's a passion because it's a never ending sport that you have to work at all the time. I mean, he wasn't born naturally gifted. He had to work. And we always put him on teams that he was not the best. He was the youngest, or he had to work his way up because we didn't want him. Yeah, we didn't want him being that kid. Oh, I'm the best. So.
Yeah, that's kind of what I do. Leanne and Sherry both know the other crazy part of my story is that the team that Christian plays on is 90 miles away from our house because it's the best team in California. And
right.
I have to say, I'm a little excited not to be having baseball practice right now, but it literally takes us sometimes 3.5 hours just to get there. But if you know baseball, like, we also get to play for the USA team in North Carolina, and we also it affords all those other opportunities. So,
right.
I
Cape Cod League too.
I would think I'm completely nuts to spend like $600 a month on gas and in LA traffic, and it makes no sense. But I don't know, baseball it's fun. Once you played at that level, it's hard to go back and play little.
Yeah.
So, and he plays first base. He's playing a lot of outfield now. I'm very proud of him because for years kids don't like to play outfield, but he's very, very good. So he plays a lot of pitchers, his left-handed pitchers.
Yep. Same here.
Oh yeah, see, really? Wow.
Yep.
And also, I'm really excited because his arm already hurts, and he's in 5th grade. He's 11. And so I'm also kind of excited that we're not playing right now for that reason. Kind of sad.
Does he have aspirations? Will he play college ball? Is he going to try to play college ball?
He would like to. Okay. I worry about his arm though. Like, I don't know if anyone else has baseball experience, but it's a real thing. Like, a lot of kids are getting Tommy John surgery out of high school now.
Yep.
For the reason that what we're doing, Yeah. So it's definitely still a thing, but he does play. He's pretty good at basketball. He likes basketball too. And so lots of video games. Anyone has kids right now probably.
And also maybe get him into golf, because it's kind of a progression to help. I mean, to help alleviate having to always throw and throw and throw. It's kind of this progression of body movement. So Stephen plays golf.
That's a good one. I like that.
What other questions do you guys have?
I have a question. Hi, I'm Michelle. Wanted to ask, have you always had a passion for writing?
For writing? Okay, I'll tell you, because our family are kind of writers without really knowing it. Like, Leanne is an amazing writer, And I could always write papers, and but we never, I don't think we realized it. And we found out our grandmother's first cousin was Jack London. So that makes us official writers, right, Leanne? No. We found that out later. So I would say I was never one to just like let me write something down. Like if I have a story to tell, yeah, I can write, but I'm not like, and you can tell by my book, I'm not a flowery writer. Like I really am like, I'd probably be better at like science journals or something.
I wondered if you had if you had it in a passion. I know I'm going to write a book someday, or is that something
question? That's a really good question, because I always kind of wanted to write a book, but then I never really knew what I would write it about. I had a few different ideas, in the past, but I never was like driven enough to do it. That's a good question.
Thank you.
You know what I found? Okay, this is what really got my writing going. Was I took a memoir class. It was called The Spirit of Story, and it was all about telling your personal story. And it was a small group with like 12 people. And these writers were really good. So it was intimidating. And you would read your work, and then people were actually like, wow, that's really good. And you get feedback. So I would say a small group like that is probably the best thing you can do, because you're writing maybe 1,500 words, you're reading it to the class, you're listening to their stuff, and you're like, hey, I can do this. I can do 1,500 words. And basically that's all you have to do to write a book. If you can write 1,500 words, like, little sections, those become your chapters. 1,500 words is like 3 pages. So that's kind of how you start, I would say. It gives you like the clay that you can play with, turn it into something.
So my
Leanne.
question, Michelle,
Leanne, who I bugged,
do you have a book to write?
I don't know. I will tell you, writing a book is like having a baby, and it really feels like childbirth, where you're like, ooh, I don't know if I can do that again. So I just finished the screenplay, and I spent. I was like, okay, I just had a baby. I have to relax. Yeah. It takes like all you've got.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
Michelle, do you have a book to write?
Oh, does Michelle? Yeah.
Maybe.
Good.
Awesome.
Good. Especially this time, you guys, if you have like any urge to write, because this is the time, right?
I've had an urge, but yeah.
Exactly.
The
Good.
seed is planting right now.
Good. Good. I love it.
She's also in our teacher training program right now with another person who is a big writer as well. So maybe a great synergy for the two of you.
Ooh, I like that.
What else? What other questions do you guys have?
I have a question. Cathy, I read your book last night and it was absolutely fascinating, but I blame you that I was up until 4 o'clock because I couldn't put it down. I had to finish it so I could go to sleep. But I wanted to ask you, does Christian have any recollection now of his conversations about Lou Gehrig, or does he ever mention this now?
It's funny, like he loves Lou Gehrig, and we will talk about it with ourselves, and he doesn't have the spontaneous memories. But what's happening is, like, when we just did this interview with Dr. Oz that's going to air this Thursday, and they ask him, like, what do you remember? And he's 11 now, and that's another thing for my book is these kids that have these past life memories, there's a small window from like the age of 2 to 6, and it's kind of the same age that kids have invisible friends and that they see angels, and just because they're kind of like closer to that dimension. So yeah, it's been, I don't want him to lie, right? I'm not going to say like, oh, go tell them what you remember. So we've been really, really had a lot of integrity around that. Like, he'll say, well, I told my parents this, and this, that he knows, that, but he's not going to say, well, I did this and I rode on trains, and because that feels really inauthentic to him right now, because it's he was 2 and 3 and 4, and like he doesn't even remember being in the snow. Like in my book, I took him to the snow, and he could remember all this stuff about Lou Gehrig, but he couldn't remember he was in the snow. Memory is an amazing. I'm fascinated with memory, like Alzheimer's, and I feel like it's all connected, because that's another interesting thing is these kids that have the past life memories, most of the time it comes out right before they go to bed or right when they wake up, which is like right when we go into this theta brainwave, which is similar, like in yoga. I'm sure you have moments of meditation. That theta brainwave, it's kind of when your subconscious is more connected. You know, some people have it in dreams, will come through, they'll see loved ones in dreams. So I feel like this whole thing of memory and subconscious is so interesting.
There was definitely that period of time where Christian really would not wear normal clothes. He would only wear baseball cleats and he would only wear baseball clothes. And Cathy was trying to get a family picture while she was in town. And she said, I don't know like what he's going to do. And sure enough, Christian was in baseball gear.
He was screaming. He like almost threw up, right? He was so mad when I tried to change his
like it was a passionate plea for baseball
crazy.
gear.
I think you were the one who was like, why don't you just let him wear his baseball clothes?
It's a path of least resistance.
It was Easter and they were wearing it. I was trying to get him to wear that. Didn't happen. Anybody, I would ask you guys, like, what little things have you been grateful about, or like more heightened awareness of at home? You guys are locked up too, right, in Nashville? Not as badly as us. Yeah.
Yeah, we still have stay-at-home orders through the 28th, which was yesterday, I believe. So
wow.
Things are starting to open up. Restaurants in some areas in Nashville proper, they can't open in Davidson County, but Williamson County can begin to open some things.
Wow. So I don't know. So yeah, if you guys are getting close to things, I don't know, like, what do you think you'll take away from this time? For us, it's been 6 weeks, 7 weeks. We're on our 7th week. Like, or what do you hope to take away from this 7 weeks of solitude, other than like 5 extra pounds, like me?
I think it's certainly been a time to reflect. You know, at first I was the 2-year-old stomping, kicking and screaming, saying, no, I can't stay home. I don't want to stay home. What am I going to do? I don't have anybody to talk to. I don't have my kid. Wah, put on the 10 pounds. And then I went, that's not good. So as I've been continuing my yoga practice, and Leanne can attest to this, it's been a struggle for me to just stay connected and stay, focused. But what I'm learning is a lot more about patience, a lot more about grace, a lot more about trust, that this time is really going to be a good time for people to reconnect with their families, reconnect with their loved ones, reconnect with themselves. And, you can either wallow in it or you can embrace it and adapt and make a change and make it for the better. And I actually love this time right now because of the changed attitude.
And the slowing down, right? Like that quietness of the mind.
Listening and really focusing.
So yeah, I appreciate that you read my book all night.
Sylvia was a principal.
Oh, really? I love that.
So I am Cathy's cousin and Leanne's sister, but I'll say that one of the things that I've really appreciated about this time is my daughter and I are taking an online class on happiness and the psychology of happiness. And so it teaches you, my new saying is, I have an attitude of gratitude. And just being so grateful for the little things, and like you're saying, slowing down and appreciating life more has been extremely or an extreme benefit of this, and definitely enjoy that. And Sylvia, I'll share with you, I don't read books. I don't like to read. I got on a plane and read the entire book and finish it. So I too couldn't put it down.
Oh, I love that. And I noticed, like, nature, I'm so grateful for nature. Like, my flowers keep blooming and I take like 10 pictures of each flower. I don't know if I just need to get out more.
What else are you guys grateful for during this time? What have you used this time for? lots of yoga, because you all have been in a lot of classes, which is amazing.
Connection, like you're really providing connection.
Yeah.
Right.
What else? For
Anyone
me,
else have
it's
a bucket list of things they want to do later?
for my bucket list is to get through the day, each day. It's everybody's talking about this pause, and our joke in our house is all of our neighbors have been doing all of this yard work and their yards are looking beautiful.
Perfect.
And yeah, we haven't really done much out there. Today I pulled some weeds, but not a whole lot else.
Leanne, give yourself grace because you have blessed all of us.
Oh,
All your writing, all your encouraging classes, your thoughtful teachers. I mean, you have put this into practice and play for us. So you're allowed a ton of grace.
That's
Well,
incredible.
thank you, Kathy.
That's
It's
not
been,
easy to do. That's
It's
not
been
easy to
fun. I
do
mean, I
this
think
way.
like we had talked about doing some online stuff for about 5 years. So thank God, the universe, whoever, just kind of kicked us in the butt and said, go.
Yeah.
So it's been a fun little experiment.
Oh, it's been very successful in my mind. I mean,
I
it's
agree.
amazing.
Yeah, I think we didn't know how we could create connection in a different format. We didn't know, we had teachers who had never thought about it. I got back I had actually seen Cathy out in LA and flew home from LAX on Saturday night, got home about 1:00 in the morning. And then that next Sunday, we closed the studio. So I had like an emergency meeting with my team. And after what we had seen out in LA and just how things were ramping up so quickly, we decided it was no longer a good idea to be in those open situations. As we look at, reopening whenever we're allowed to do that, we look at, I'm grateful for some things like we have UV light in our heating system, which nobody really knows about, but we do, which is why it doesn't smell in there. But now it's got this extra antiviral activity. And then also the high humidity, the droplets actually drop so that we're not getting that dry air with things kind of bouncing around. So high humidity is not as volatile of a situation for a virus. So what else? Any other questions or any other things you're grateful for? Questions you want to ask Cathy about? How'd you write a book? What happened? How do you buy a house? What are the mortgage rates? Anything else? You could ask questions about anything.
I'll take a picture of you guys.
Yes. Oh yeah, I haven't done that. Usually I do. Well, thank you guys. We're probably at a good spot. I need a picture too. Hold on, Cathy. There, I'll do this and send it to you. Oopsie. There we go. Thank you guys for showing up. It's always fun to get to do these sessions and to get to bring different guests in that hopefully you guys can learn something from, to hear about, just a different dimension, and maybe pique your own interest about maybe if you have a book that you can step out and do that, or else even any big goal. Like Cathy said, it was kind of more of an idea, and then jumping into that channel, that river of faith, whatever it is that kind of carries you along and gets you to that ultimate destination. Anything else, Cathy? How can people keep in touch with you? How can they catch up with you and see what you're up to and see more?
Yeah, you know what? I'm not a great marketer and a great like I don't really send out emails or anything, but I do have that Dr. Oz interview coming up this Thursday here at 3:00. I think he changed his time a little later than normal. And if you want to contact me, like for your writing, it's Michelle, right? Like if you write and you like, hey, can you read this? Like people send me stuff all the time, and I love to encourage people because I'm like, if I can do it, anyone can do it. So Yeah, I'm very open. And the other thing I did when I did my book that helped a lot was I just sent it to everyone. Like I had a list of like 25 people. I thought, Jack Canfield, Evan Alexander, and they actually read it and they wrote me really nice reviews. So like it's just creating that possibility step by step if you feel like you have that in you.
So one thing I'll say is that Cathy is what she lacks in marketing, she excels in networking.
But I'm a hermit.
Yeah, we used to laugh as that we'd go to like Cathy's house or you'd look at her phone. There was one day I remember that somebody's kid was like a huge basketball fan and they loved Kobe Bryant. And Cathy's like, oh, well, let's call Kobe, and like pulls up her cell phone and calls Kobe and like whatever else. She worked for Magic
The best
Johnson.
story is I used to work for Magic Johnson.
Right.
Magic still to this day, he's like, I can be in any airport, any place in the world, and someone comes to me and goes, I know someone who used to work for you, and he'll go, I just say, Cathy Byrd.
Yeah.
But I was the only white person, so it's probably white people going up to him.
But so if you have questions about how to connect with other people, Cathy is a genius at that as well. So
I want to
Thank you. This is a nice time. Thank you for allowing me time.
what was that, Cathy?
I said thank you for allowing me this time.
Oh, other Cathy.
Oh, that's
Sorry.
Cathy. Oh.
I just want to keep up with Christian and know how he's doing in baseball and kind of follow his career, because
Can you
this
come
is
to a game? You live close.
I would love to watch him.
Okay. Hey, we
I
have
would
to connect us, Leanne. We gotta connect. Are you on Facebook too? I'm on Facebook. I am on Facebook.
Yeah, I'll find you.
Okay, cool.
Yes. And we'll put the link for the Dr. Oz segment in our Epic Yoga Tribe, so you guys can watch that. We'll also put the replay of this in our members area, and you can watch back to that if you have more questions. And of course, if you need to get in touch with Cathy, you can certainly reach out to me, and I can
Absolutely.
can help.
And our
you connect.
Dr. Oz will probably be the second half of the show. So I think he usually does coronavirus first half. Filler.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cathy, for coming and
you.
hanging out with us. And
It's already dark there, huh? I can see.
it is.
Oh,
It's 8:00.
it is. I'm gonna go running right now. Sunny here.
Lucky.
Cathy and I have sun.
Nice.
Thank
Thanks
you
so
all.
much, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you.
So much.
Thanks,